This is my true story. I gave my life to a woman I loved. For 30 years, I carried her sickness on my back. I fed her, washed her, paid her bills, and slept on hospital chairs just to keep her alive. I thought my devotion was unbreakable. But one evening, a neighbor knocked on my door and showed me a short video. In a few seconds, everything I believed shattered. My love, my sacrifice, my years, all turned to ice. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and please subscribe so more people can hear my story. For 30 years, my life was not my own. My days and nights belonged to her sickness. Every morning began with medicine bottles lined up like soldiers on the counter. Pills sorted in small boxes, doses measured, alarms set so not a single one was missed. I learned the names of drugs better than the names of my old friends. I knew which pill made her dizzy, which pill made her stomach ache, which pill she pretended to swallow but spat out when she thought I wasn't looking. I kept records for doctors, schedules for nurses, and receipts for treatments that seemed to never end. The nights were worse. I sat by her bedside while she moaned from fevers that came and went like unwelcome guests. I held wet cloths to her head, rubbed her back when she shook, and whispered that she would be okay. Many nights I did not sleep at all. I stared at her chest rising and falling, afraid it might stop if I closed my eyes. I drank bitter coffee in silence at dawn, my body weak, my eyes heavy, but my heart refusing to rest. Love made me strong where strength should have failed. Hospitals became my second home. I knew the smell of disinfectant better than the smell of my own house. I sat in waiting rooms, stiff on plastic chairs, surrounded by the cries of other families. I read the same posters about washing hands and preventing infections hundreds of times. I learned how to lift her into wheelchairs, how to guide her into cars, how to sign endless forms with trembling hands when doctors spoke of risks and procedures. I gave up my weekends to sit by her bed when she was admitted, holding her hand, watching machines beep like clockwork. My friends took trips, went fishing, saw the world. I saw hospital walls, and I never complained. I gave up my youth in pieces, quietly, without regret. When invitations came, weddings, reunions, travels, I declined. She needs me, I said. That was my life, my excuse, my truth. People admired me. They said I was devoted. They said I was loyal. They called me a saint. But I never wanted to be a saint. I only wanted to be her husband. If carrying her sickness was the price of love, I paid it gladly. When she cried, I wiped her tears. When she coughed, I held the bowl. When she trembled, I wrapped her in blankets and whispered that tomorrow would be better. Every moment of my life became a shadow of her illness. I stopped living for myself. I lived for her comfort, her survival. I told myself that was what marriage was: sacrifice without question, love without limit. I believed it with all my heart. The house changed too. It no longer felt like a home but like a ward. Bottles of pills in the kitchen, syringes in drawers, stacks of hospital papers on the table, machines humming in the bedroom, curtains closed to keep out the sun she said was too bright for her head. The sound of neighbors laughing outside sometimes drifted in, reminding me of a world I no longer belonged to. But I stayed inside, beside her, because that was where love placed me. I watched myself grow old in her shadow. My hair turned gray, my back bent, my hands stiffened. But still, I bent lower, worked harder, gave more. I cut the grass, cooked meals, cleaned clothes, and still returned to her bedside when she called my name. Every ache in my body I ignored, because her pain mattered more. Even when my knees burned, even when my breath grew short, I told myself I had no right to complain. She was the sick one, not me. My job was to carry, not to be carried. 30 years, 3 long decades of devotion. I gave her the prime of my life. I missed promotions at work because I would not travel and leave her alone. I missed vacations because I could not be away in case she had an attack. My savings went into treatments, checkups, and therapies. I watched friends buy new cars, build bigger homes, retire with comfort. I poured everything into her survival. And through it all, I told myself I was lucky. Lucky to have her beside me, even sick. lucky to serve her, lucky to give my strength for her life. Love blinded me. Love tied me. Love made me bow lower each time the sickness pulled her down. I thought my sacrifice would mean something in the end. I thought she would remember every pill, every night, every sacrifice. I thought devotion built unbreakable trust. For 30 years, I believed I was her caretaker, her savior, her shield against suffering. But I did not know then what I know now, that all along I was not holding her up. I was being dragged down into a life built on lies. Sacrifice became my second name. I did not live like other men my age. While they built careers, I built medicine schedules. While they traveled, I traveled only to hospitals. While they saved for retirement, I emptied accounts into treatments. My life was measured not in joys, but in pills, receipts, and long sighs in the night. At work, promotions came and went. My bosses said I was skilled, reliable, a man who could lead. But leadership meant travel, late hours, long meetings. I could not do it. I had to be home by evening to prepare her meals, to give her medicine, to help her to bed. So I refused. Again and again, I turned down chances that others would have fought for. They climbed. I stayed. And with every missed chance, my salary stayed low, my savings stayed thin. But I told myself it was right. What good is money if your wife is sick? What good is status if she suffers? I convinced myself the sacrifice was noble. Vacations? None. Friends invited us to weddings in other cities, to trips in the mountains, to holidays by the sea. Every time, I declined. She cannot travel, I said. She is too weak. I never left her side. I watched friends post pictures of beaches, of family trips, of memories made. I made no memories, except of holding her hand in waiting rooms or paying bills at pharmacy counters. Even simple joys were gone. I loved books once, but I sold many to pay for treatments. I loved fishing, but I sold my gear when she said we needed more money for her medicines. I gave up hobbies, gave up comforts, gave up dreams. Every choice was shaped by her illness. If she needed, I gave. If she asked, I provided. If she sighed, I fixed. I thought that was love. My health suffered too. Years of lifting her from bed, pushing her in wheelchairs, carrying groceries alone, working long hours and coming home to more work. It wore me down. My back hurt, my knees ached, my hands shook. But I never complained. When neighbors asked, "How are you holding up?" I smiled and said, "I'm fine." I told myself my pain was nothing compared to hers. That was the lie I lived in, believing I was the strong one, the lucky one, the chosen one to carry this weight. Money drained fast. My savings, once small but steady, vanished into tests, therapies, and procedures. Insurance covered some, but not all. The rest came from my pocket. I sold my car. I sold my watch. I sold pieces of land my father had left me. Every sale cut me, but I told myself her life was worth more than anything I owned. Each time I handed over money, I thought, this is not loss. This is love. People around me praised me. They said, "You are devoted. You are loyal. You are a saint." But praise does not fill an empty stomach. Praise does not repair a broken back. Praise does not bring back the years that vanish. Still, I smiled when they said it. I wore the crown of sacrifice like it was gold, even though it was iron pressing me down. At times, I wondered if she noticed what I gave up. I wondered if she saw the lines on my face grow deeper, the bags under my eyes grow darker, the weight of years bending me. I wondered if she ever thought, this man has given me his life. But she rarely said thank you. She rarely looked at me with the love I gave her. She only asked for more medicine, more care, more money. And I gave, because I thought that was my duty. I told myself I was building a legacy of love, that one day, when the sickness ended, she would remember me as the man who saved her, who never left, who gave everything. I thought she would smile at me with gratitude, whisper that she could not have lived without me. That was my comfort when I went to bed exhausted. That was my dream when I woke at dawn to another day of the same routine. But what I did not see What I refused to believe was that my sacrifices were not saving anyone. They were feeding a lie I was too blind to question, a lie that would one day crack open and show me that everything, every missed chance, every sold possession, every sleepless night, was for nothing. For 30 years, I carried her sickness as if it were my own. I thought love demanded this sacrifice. I thought love meant emptying myself to fill her. But love built on lies is not love. It is slavery. And I did not know it then, but I was not her savior. I was her prisoner. For years, I told myself her sickness was real. I repeated it like a prayer. She was weak. She was fragile. She needed me. That was the story I carried in my head. That was the story I built my life around. But even in the deepest love, doubts creep in like shadows. And though I tried to bury them, they never truly left me. There were mornings when she said she was too sick to move, her body limp, her voice soft, her eyes heavy. I carried her water, I prepared her soup, I adjusted her pillows. But by evening, when neighbors dropped by, she sat straighter, her eyes brighter, her voice stronger. She laughed at their jokes, she smiled like she had no pain. And when they left, she sank back into weakness, groaning, calling me to fetch more medicine. I noticed. My heart noticed. But my mind refused to believe. Love is blind, yes, but it is also obedient. And I obeyed the story I had already chosen. Sometimes her illness seemed to follow a pattern, as if it had a schedule. Sick on Mondays, better on Fridays. Weak during the weeks when bills were due. Stronger when friends invited her out. I told myself it was coincidence. I told myself sickness is strange, unpredictable. I told myself I had no right to question, because questioning meant doubting her, and doubting her meant betraying her. So I buried my suspicion under layers of devotion. I remember one day in winter. I came home early from work, snow still on my shoulders. I expected to find her in bed, coughing, as she had told me in the morning. But instead, I saw her standing in the kitchen, singing softly to herself, moving easily. When she noticed me, she dropped into a chair, held her stomach, and said the pain was back. My chest tightened. For a moment, I almost asked her why she had been singing. But the words died on my lips. I nodded, carried her blanket, made her tea. I chose silence over suspicion. There were pills she claimed made her dizzy, pills she said upset her stomach. I crushed them carefully, mixed them in food, made sure she took them. Yet sometimes I found them later, hidden under the bed, wrapped in tissues, tossed in corners. I told myself maybe she forgot, maybe she was scared. I never accused her. I never asked why. Instead, I cleaned them quietly and pretended I had not seen. Love can make a man blind, but devotion can make him mute. I silenced my own questions. I gagged my own doubts. Each time I noticed something strange, I buried it deeper. I told myself trust was stronger than suspicion. I told myself if I doubted her, all my years of sacrifice would lose meaning. And I could not face that. I could not let 30 years turn into nothing. So I carried my doubts like stones in my pocket, heavy but hidden. Neighbors whispered sometimes. She doesn't look as sick as she says. Friends raised eyebrows when she refused gatherings but was seen shopping. I defended her every time. You don't see her when she's weak, I said. You don't hear her cries at night. I spoke with anger, with pride, with the conviction of a man who believes his love is truth. But deep inside, their words echoed. I could not admit it, not even to myself. So I buried the doubts deeper, and the more I buried them, the heavier they became. At night, when the house was dark, when she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake. I replayed small moments in my head. Her sudden energy when company arrived, her secret smiles when she thought I wasn't watching, her excuses when I asked simple questions. My chest grew tight. My heart whispered, something is wrong. But my mind shouted back, she is sick. She needs you. Don't doubt. Don't betray. And so I stayed silent. Looking back now, I see how clear the signs were. I see how blind I was, how willingly I chained myself to her lies. But at the time, doubt felt like treason. To question her sickness was to question my purpose. And without purpose, what was I? Nothing. So I chose belief over truth. I chose devotion over suspicion. I chose to bury what I saw with my own eyes. But buried truths do not stay hidden forever. They wait. They grow. They rise again when you least expect it. And one day, a knock on my door, a neighbor's quiet face, and a short video would dig up every doubt I had buried and turn them into knives. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the clock ticks louder than usual and the house feels heavier than stone. I had just finished setting her pills on the tray. She was in bed, claiming the pain was sharp that day, her voice weak, her face pale. I believed her, as I always did, and walked to the kitchen to prepare tea. That was when I heard the knock. Slow, hesitant. Not the knock of someone casual, but the knock of someone carrying weight. When I opened the door, it was my neighbor. A good man, younger than me, with kind eyes that now looked troubled. He shifted on his feet, cleared his throat, and for a moment he could not even meet my gaze. My heart stirred. I thought perhaps something had happened to his family. But then he said softly, "I need to show you something." His voice carried the kind of tone men use when they wish they didn't have to speak at all. I asked him to step in, but he shook his head. "Better not," he said, almost in a whisper. Then he pulled out his phone. My stomach tightened. I had never seen him look so uncomfortable. His hands trembled slightly as he tapped the screen. He glanced over his shoulder, as if afraid of being seen. Finally, he held the phone toward me. "I thought long before bringing this, but you deserve to know." I frowned. I did not understand. For 30 years my life had been one thing only: her sickness. My days were built on trust, on sacrifice, on blind faith. What could he possibly show me that mattered more than the weight I already carried? Yet something in his eyes made me brace myself. It was not gossip. It was not small talk. It was truth, heavy and sharp. I took the phone in my hand. My heart beat faster, louder, almost drowning out the quiet hum of the refrigerator. The screen lit up. A video. Just a few seconds long. I pressed play. For a moment, I heard nothing but my own breath. Then came sound, laughter. Not coughing, not groaning, not the weak voice I had heard from her bed just minutes earlier. Laughter. Strong, full, alive. My eyes widened. On the screen, I saw her, my wife. The woman I had carried through sickness for 3 decades. She was not lying in bed. She was standing, walking, her face glowing, her body strong. She was outside, in the sunlight, smiling in a way I had not seen in years. My chest tightened, my hands shook. Beside her was a man, younger, taller, holding her close. She leaned into him, her arms wrapped around him, her lips pressing against his in a way I thought she had forgotten. The camera caught it all: her laughter, her health, her betrayal. I froze. The world around me faded. I could no longer hear the clock, no longer feel the air in my lungs. I only saw her, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, living a life I never knew, with a man I had never seen. My neighbor's voice broke through the storm in my head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want to be the one. But you had to know. I saw her yesterday. She's not sick, not like she says. She's been lying to you. Yesterday." That word struck me hardest. Yesterday, when she told me she was too weak to stand. Yesterday, when I spoon-fed her soup and adjusted her blankets. Yesterday, when I sat by her bed while she closed her eyes and pretended to moan from pain. Yesterday, she had been in another man's arms. I wanted to speak, but no words came. My throat felt tight, my body numb. My hands gripped the phone like it was a weapon, like it could kill me just by being in my hand. 30 years of devotion collapsed in seconds. 30 years of sacrifice mocked in a shaky recording. The neighbor took back his phone, lowered his head, and said no more. He did not need to. The truth was already burning in my chest. He turned and walked away, leaving me in the doorway, frozen, the shadows of evening stretching around me like a shroud. Inside the house, she called my name weakly, pretending again, pretending to be sick, pretending to need me. But her voice no longer fooled me. I had seen the truth. And the truth did not whisper. The truth screamed in silence. That night, as I stood alone in the kitchen, I knew my life had changed forever. The doubts I buried were no longer shadows. They were flames. The story I lived in for 30 years had ended with a knock on the door and a short video. The video was short, no more than 30 seconds. But 30 seconds can destroy 30 years. I replayed it again and again, my thumb heavy on the screen, my heart beating so loud it hurt. Every time I pressed play, it was the same. No mistake, no trick of the light, no dream. It was her. My wife. The woman who had told me she was too sick to walk, too weak to eat, too tired to even breathe some days. Yet in that video, she was alive in ways I had not seen for decades. Her laughter struck me first. I had forgotten what it sounded like. For years, all I had heard were groans, sighs, soft complaints, and whispered cries. I had believed her joy was stolen by sickness. But in that clip, her laugh was full, bright, the kind of laugh that shakes the body. It rang in my ears like a cruel echo, mocking all the nights I had sat by her bedside while she pretended to suffer. That laugh was not the laugh of a sick woman. That was the laugh of someone free. Her body told the next truth. She stood tall, her back straight, her steps steady. No cane, no wheelchair, no shaking hands reaching for bottles of pills. Her skin glowed with health. Her eyes were clear. Her arms, strong enough to wrap around the man beside her, pulled him close like a lover. Not a patient, not a fragile woman. A woman living a secret life while I carried the mask of her illness. And then came the kiss. Her lips pressed to his with ease, with hunger, with the kind of passion she had told me she no longer had strength for. For years she had turned her face away when I leaned close. For years she told me she was too weak, too tired, too sick. Yet in that video, she kissed him like a woman alive, like a woman who had never once been ill. The sight cut me deeper than any blade. The man was younger, his arm firm around her waist, his hand resting on her back with the comfort of someone who had held her many times before. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. Not the tired smile she gave me when I handed her soup, but a radiant smile, full of life. A smile I thought had died long ago, a smile she had saved for someone else. The background in the video burned me too. They were not far away, not in some hidden place. It was the park near our home, a place I had avoided because she always said she was too weak to walk there. I had passed it 1,000 times on my way to buy her medicine, believing she could never step foot there again. Yet there she was, walking freely, laughing freely, kissing freely, in the very park I had ignored for her sake. Every detail in that video mocked me. The clothes she wore, not the dull robes she dragged around the house, but bright colors, carefully chosen. The way she carried herself, confident, youthful, alive. The way she touched him, tender, deliberate, the kind of touch she denied me for decades. I stared until my eyes burned. I wanted to find some excuse. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was staged. Maybe it was not what it looked like. But the date stamped on the corner ended those lies. Recorded yesterday. Yesterday, the day she had groaned in bed, claiming she could not even stand, while I spoon-fed her soup and tucked her blankets. Yesterday, while I carried the weight of her fake illness, she carried another man in her arms. The short video shattered me in silence. My legs weakened, my chest grew tight, my hands trembled so much I nearly dropped the phone. I felt cold all over, as if the blood in my veins had turned to ice. 30 years of care, of loyalty, of sacrifice, reduced to one cruel performance caught on a shaky recording. I thought of the nights I sat awake, watching her breathe, terrified she might not survive until morning. I thought of the jobs I refused, the trips I canceled, the money I spent, the youth I gave. I thought of the sweat on my back as I carried her upstairs she claimed she could not climb. I thought of every prayer I whispered, begging for her healing. And now I saw she was never sick. She had healed long ago, but only in the arms of another man. The betrayal was not only in the kiss. It was in every moment of the last 30 years. Every pill she spat out, every cough she faked, every tear she forced, every groan she performed. All of it was theater, and I had been the audience, clapping with my sacrifices while she lived her double life. The video ended quickly. Just laughter, walking, kissing. But its end brought no relief. My finger pressed replay over and over, as if punishing myself, as if I needed to burn the truth deeper into my eyes. Each time I watched, my heart froze more. By the fifth replay, I no longer felt shock. I felt nothing. Absolute nothing. That nothing was worse than pain. Pain burns. Nothing freezes. And in that moment, I realized my heart was no longer breaking. It was frozen. Frozen solid by betrayal. The short video was only seconds long. But in those seconds, it ended the life I thought I had lived. When the video stopped, I just stared at the black screen. My thumb hovered over the phone, but I didn't press replay again. My body would not move. My breath sat heavy in my chest, locked tight like a door that would not open. For 30 years I had built my life around a single idea, that she was sick, that she needed me, that my sacrifice had meaning. In 30 seconds, that idea was destroyed. The weight of it didn't crush me, it froze me. It felt like ice creeping up from my feet to my head. My fingers went numb first, the phone slipping a little as my grip weakened. Then my stomach knotted and turned cold. It wasn't anger yet. It wasn't even grief. It was a silence so deep it felt like the air had been sucked from the room. The hum of the refrigerator faded. The ticking clock stopped. My neighbor's footsteps outside disappeared. There was only the cold inside me. I tried to speak, but no words came. My tongue felt heavy, my throat dry. I looked toward the bedroom where she lay, pretending to be weak. Even from there I could hear her soft, fake moans. The sound that once made me rush with pity now sounded like an echo from a stranger. My hands trembled, but my face stayed still. On the outside, I must have looked calm. On the inside, everything had turned to stone. Images flooded my mind, not from the video, but from my own past. Nights spent holding her hand in hospitals, mornings making breakfast while she claimed she was too weak to leave the bed. Years of bending my back to lift her into chairs, of working extra hours to pay for her treatments, of selling things I loved to afford her comfort. All of it like a film rolling behind my eyes. But now every scene was painted with betrayal. Every pill, every tear, every whispered prayer, all of it a lie. I thought of the friends I had pushed away, the opportunities I had refused, the life I had set aside. I thought of the man I used to be before her sickness became my prison. I had loved her through it all. I had chosen her over everything, and she had chosen another man while feeding me lies. The cold in my chest spread to my heart. It didn't break. It hardened. People think betrayal makes you explode, shout, throw things. For some it does. For me, it froze me. My heart turned solid, my mind went quiet, and my body became a statue. Even my tears refused to fall. I felt them behind my eyes, but they stayed there, frozen like everything else. She called my name from the bedroom again, soft and weak as always. "Could you bring me some water?" she asked. The same voice she had used for decades, the voice of a patient needing her caretaker. But now I heard it clearly. It was not weakness. It was control. It was the voice of someone who knew I would obey. But I did not move. I stayed in the kitchen, holding the phone like a block of ice. The room around me blurred. The table, the chairs, the medicine bottles, all looked like props from a stage I had been trapped on. And the truth hit me. I had not been her husband for 30 years. I had been her nurse, her servant, her cover. She had taken my devotion and built her freedom on it. She had chained me with my own loyalty. The cold inside me brought a strange kind of clarity. For the first time in decades, I saw her as she was, not as I wanted her to be. Not sick, not fragile, not my partner. A liar, a manipulator. A woman who had stolen my life one day at a time. And with that clarity came silence. I didn't feel the need to rush to the bedroom anymore. I didn't feel the need to ask her why. The video had answered everything. I stood there for a long time, staring at nothing, listening to the faint sounds of her pretending. My body felt heavier than stone, but also strangely light. The weight of care, of devotion, of sacrifice, it was still on me, but now I knew it had been wasted. Wasted on a lie. Wasted on someone who smiled at another man while I spoon-fed her soup. That knowledge froze me, but it also began to free me. My heart didn't just break, it froze solid. The warmth that had carried me through 30 years of service was gone. In its place was ice, cold, still, unmovable. People think coldness is anger, but it is not. Coldness is what happens when even anger has no energy left. Coldness is what happens when love has been burned out completely. That was the moment I stopped being her caretaker. That was the moment I stopped being her fool. I didn't move yet. I didn't speak yet. But inside, something had ended. Something had died. And something new had been born. Not hate, not rage, but a cold, clear decision. The night after I saw the video, I did not sleep. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off, staring at the bottles of medicine lined on the counter. For 30 years, those bottles had been my life. I measured days by the time she needed pills, nights by the sound of her groans. Each bottle felt like proof of my devotion, proof that I was a good husband, that I was keeping my vow, that I was living for love. But now, looking at them, they were no longer proof. They were chains. Shackles I had willingly locked on myself while she laughed behind my back. Every pill I crushed, every glass of water I carried, every night I stayed awake at her side, wasted. Not because care is ever wasted when it is real, but because her sickness had never been real. She turned my love into labor, my devotion into slavery. I thought I was saving her life, but I was only feeding her lies. I remembered the bills I paid, thousands upon thousands of dollars gone, my savings drained, my pension broken. I sold land my father left me, pieces of my family's history, so she could continue this performance. I sold the watch he gave me on my wedding day, telling myself her health mattered more than symbols. I worked extra shifts, coming home with tired bones, only to start another shift as her caretaker. Now I saw it clear. I had not been her savior. I had been her prisoner. The prayers came back to me next. I remembered kneeling beside the bed, my hands clasped, whispering to God to take away her pain. I begged for her healing. I asked for her strength. I offered my own health in exchange. I told God I would carry the weight if only she could smile again. Now I knew she had been smiling, but not for me. My prayers had been twisted into a joke. My faith had been used as another tool to blind me. I thought of the life I could have lived, the chances I had turned down, the places I had never seen, the simple joys I had abandoned, all stolen not by sickness, but by her lies. I was not a husband living with a sick wife. I was a healthy man trapped in a cage built of deception. The realization grew heavier the longer I sat in that kitchen. My chest ached, not from age, but from the weight of truth pressing down. She was not my patient. She was my prison warden. Every time she coughed, every time she moaned, every time she claimed weakness, she tightened the chains. And I bowed lower, thinking I was noble, thinking I was loyal. I had not been noble. I had been blind. The faces of people who once praised me flashed in my mind. "You are such a good husband," they said. "You are loyal. You are strong. You are an example to all men." They thought I was carrying love. But I see now, I was carrying deceit. They did not see the bars around me. They did not see how I had been tricked. And maybe that was the cruelest part. The world thought I was lucky to have her. The truth was, I had been robbed by her every day. The weight of realization was not just anger, it was grief. Grief for the man I could have been. Grief for the life I could have lived. Grief for 30 years wasted on someone who did not deserve a single day. And grief is heavier than hate. Hate burns fast. Grief sits in your bones and stays. I walked into the bedroom once, just to look at her. She was lying still, pretending again. Her eyes closed, her breath slow, as if she was weak. I stood there in the doorway, silent. For years, that sight had filled me with pity. That night, it filled me with nothing. She looked small, fragile, almost pitiful. But I no longer believed the act. I no longer believed a single sound that came from her. She was not my sick wife. She was the woman who had stolen my life. I turned away and went back to the kitchen. I sat until the sun rose. The house was quiet, but inside me there was a storm of silence, heavy and cold. 30 years gone. 30 years thrown into fire. 30 years of devotion wasted on lies. My heart did not break again. It had already frozen, and frozen hearts do not shatter. They only grow colder. That was the weight of realization, not just knowing the truth, but feeling the full gravity of what it meant. I had not just lost a wife, I had lost my life. The next evening, I made my choice. For 30 years, I had been silent. Silent when she groaned. Silent when she asked for more. Silent when neighbors whispered. Silence had been my prison. But now silence would become my weapon. I did not plan a speech. I did not plan to shout. I only planned to show her the truth. She was in bed again, as always. The curtains drawn, the room dim, the smell of medicine in the air. She looked up weakly when I entered, her voice soft. "Can you bring me my tea?" she asked. The same words I had heard 1,000 times. But this time, I did not move to the kettle. I moved to the chair beside her bed and sat down. My face gave nothing away. My hands held the phone. She frowned, confused. "What is it?" she whispered. I said nothing. I only pressed play. The sound of her laughter filled the room. Strong, bright, alive. Not the weak moan she had just used. Her eyes widened. She froze. The image of her on the screen, walking, laughing, kissing another man, filled the space between us. For a moment, the air itself seemed to stop. Her lips parted, but no words came. She stared at the screen as if staring into a mirror that showed her soul. I sat still, my eyes on her, not on the phone. I watched her face more than the video. Shock first, then fear, then panic. Her hands trembled on the blanket. She tried to speak. This is old," she stammered. Her voice cracked. "It's not what it looks like." But the date in the corner glowed bright. Yesterday. The truth stamped in numbers that no excuse could erase. I did not argue. I did not shout. I let the video play again, the sound of her laughter filling the room like knives. Her face twisted. She grabbed at my arm. "Please listen to me." I was confused. It meant nothing. "You've misunderstood." Her words spilled like water, desperate, messy, empty. Still, I did not answer. I pressed replay. Again, her laughter filled the room. Again, her arms wrapped around the man. Again, her lips pressed to his. Each replay stripped her excuses bare. Each replay cut through her lies. She began to cry, real tears this time. Her body shook, her voice broke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You don't understand. I was lonely. I was—" She stopped herself, realizing her excuses were poison on her own tongue. I stood slowly, my knees stiff, my back aching. I looked down at her, and for the first time in 30 years, I saw her not as my wife, not as my patient, not as my partner, but as a stranger, a liar, a thief who had stolen my years. My voice, when it came, was low, steady, cold. 30 years, I said. 30 years of my life. And all of it was a lie. She reached for me, sobbing, her hands clutching at the air. "Please, don't leave. We can fix this. I need you. I can't live without you." But I knew now. She had lived just fine without me. She had lived with him, laughed with him, kissed him, while I sat in the dark, grinding pills and counting pennies. She never needed me. She only needed my devotion, my labor, my blindness. I did not shout. I did not curse. I did not strike her. My revenge was simpler, colder. I put the phone in my pocket, turned my back, and walked toward the door. Her voice rose behind me, desperate, begging, cracking with fear. But I did not turn. In the doorway, I paused. For 30 years, I had always turned back when she called, always returned to her side, always obeyed her voice. This time, I kept walking. The sound of her cries followed me, but they were powerless. She had chained me with lies, but the truth had broken those chains. I stepped outside into the night air. The sky was clear, the stars sharp. For the first time in decades, I breathed without weight on my chest. Behind me, the house was filled with her cries. But ahead of me, there was silence, and in that silence, freedom. The confrontation was not loud, it was not violent, it was simple. A video played, a truth revealed. A man who had carried 30 years of devotion finally stood and walked away. I left the bedroom with no bags, no suitcase, no belongings. For 30 years, I had carried the weight of her illness on my back. Now, walking through the house, I carried nothing. And that nothing felt lighter than all the years of lies I had endured. My feet moved slow but steady, as if each step was breaking the chains I had worn for decades. The house looked different that night. The walls, once filled with memories, now felt hollow. The photos on the shelves showed smiles that meant nothing anymore. The medicine bottles on the counter were no longer signs of care. They were evidence of a game she had played. Every corner of that house reminded me not of love, but of wasted years. I realized then I could not stay. To remain even one night longer would mean living again in the cage she built. She cried from the bedroom. Her voice was frantic, desperate, broken. Please don't go. Please listen to me. We can fix this. Don't leave me. But her words fell flat. They had no power left. For 30 years, her voice had controlled me. But now it was just noise. Noise I could walk away from. I opened the closet, looked at my old coat, the same one I had worn to countless hospital visits, the same one stained by rain and age. I put it on, not because I needed it, but because it felt like the last thing that still belonged to me. I left everything else behind, clothes, books, furniture, memories, all of it stayed with her. She had stolen my life, but she would not steal my dignity. I walked to the door. My hands did not shake. My heart did not race. The cold inside me guided me. When I opened it, the night air touched my face. It felt sharper, clearer, freer than anything I had felt in decades. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me without looking back. I did not slam it. I did not lock it. I simply closed it. That soft sound was louder than any argument. On the street, I stood for a moment. The stars above me glowed. I thought of all the nights I had stared at hospital ceilings, wishing for something beyond the walls. Now here it was, the open sky. I had no plan, no destination, no bag of belongings. But I had something more important. I had myself. For 30 years, I had not belonged to myself. I had belonged to her lies. Tonight, I belonged to me again. Her cries echoed faintly through the walls as I walked away. But I did not stop. I did not turn. Every step was a goodbye. A goodbye to the pain. A goodbye to the manipulation. A goodbye to the years stolen from me. I felt no anger as I left. Anger burns hot, and hot things fade. What I felt was cold. Cold stays. Cold preserves. Cold protects. My goodbye was not a burst of rage. It was an end carved in ice. She had taken 3 decades, but she would not take one more second. I walked until the house was out of sight. With each step, the weight of 30 years grew lighter. The night was quiet, but inside me, there was a final voice. A voice that said, "You are free." That was the cold goodbye. No shouting, no fighting. Just a door closed, footsteps fading, and a man reclaiming the dignity he had once given away. I did not run. I did not hide. I simply walked, one slow step after another, into the night. The air was cold but clear, and for the first time in 30 years, I felt it touch my skin without weight. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and the dignity she could not steal. Behind me, a house full of lies stood quiet. Ahead of me, only an empty road. Yet that empty road felt wider than the life I had just left. People think bitterness is fire, that it burns and smokes and consumes. But bitterness is not fire. It is ice. It seeps into you until you no longer feel anything. That is what lived in me now. Not rage, not screaming, not even grief. Just ice. The frozen truth of 30 years wasted on a woman who built her life on deception. I thought of all I had done for her. Every pill I crushed, every bill I paid, every prayer I whispered. I thought of the nights I spent in hospital chairs while she was out laughing with another man. I thought of my youth, gone, my health, gone, my friends, gone, my savings, gone. All of it given in the name of love, all of it built on a lie. Yet as I walked farther, another thought settled inside me. Even though she stole my years, she had not stolen my final choice. That choice was mine. I had left. I had closed the door. I had taken nothing but my dignity. And dignity, once reclaimed, is stronger than gold. I did not feel hate for her as I walked. Hate is still warm. Hate still gives energy. I felt something colder, something still. I was not bitter. Bitterness implies warmth. I was ice now, frozen by betrayal, beyond repair. My heart was no longer breaking. It had already broken and turned solid. The road ahead was empty. No family waiting, no friends nearby, no plan to follow. But for the first time in decades, I felt free. The chains she had wrapped around me with her sickness were gone. The cage she had built with her lies had no door to lock me anymore. I had stepped out. I would rebuild myself in the last years I had. Maybe I would sit in the park she said she was too weak to visit. Maybe I would travel somewhere I had always dreamed. Maybe I would simply sit in silence under the open sky and feel the air. Whatever I did, it would be mine. I stopped once on the road and looked up at the stars. They seemed sharper that night, like ice crystals against a dark sky. I whispered to myself, 30 years gone. But not tonight. Tonight is mine. The sound of my own voice surprised me. It was steady, calm, without tremor. The voice of a man who had lost everything but found himself. I thought about what I would say if someone asked me why I left, why I gave up, why I didn't fight. I would tell them this. You cannot fight a lie with fists. You fight it with truth. And the truth, once you see it, changes you. It does not make you stronger. It makes you clear. It makes you cold. But in that coldness, there is a strange kind of peace. So this is my final thought. I took care of my wife for 30 years. I fed her, clothed her, gave her my life. I believed she was sick, weak, fragile. But she was not my patient. She was my captor. She chained me with pity, blinded me with lies. And one day, a neighbor knocked, and a short video ended it all. I am not bitter. Bitterness implies warmth. I am ice now, frozen by betrayal, beyond repair. My heart did not just break. It froze forever. Final thought. I took care of her for 30 years. One video ended it all, and my heart froze forever.